Another week is in the books, and just like that, most teams in the country have played 1/3 of their schedule. We're entering October, and we're starting to get a better idea as to which teams are truly legit. Today, I'll be sharing with you guys my top 25 rankings after the 4th week of the college football season. Unfortunately, the AP poll doesn't yet have me as a voter, but if I were to have a ballot, this is what my top 25 would look like. Before we get to today's video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to the channel. If you love college football content, then this is definitely the place for you. Also, drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on the rankings. Was there a team that I had ranked too high or too low? Let me know. It helps the algorithm of the video and helps share the video with more college football fans. If there are any other college football videos you'd like to see similar to this, comment down below and it very well could turn into my next video. Alright, so here's how my top 25 would look after week 4. Alabama remains number 1 as they had a thrilling 49-point victory against Southern Miss. For those wondering, yes, they covered the spread. Bryce Young completed 20 of 22 passes for 300 yards and 5 passing touchdowns. We knew that Alabama would win by 50, so now it's time to focus on next week's matchup against Ole Miss. I've been saying this for weeks, but keep an eye on the Rebels next week. With how good their offense is, there's a chance that the Tide can be on upset watch. Georgia comes in at number 2, and we don't have to spend any time on them either. They crushed Vanderbilt 63-0. For the game, the Bulldogs had 8 touchdowns, while the Commodores had only 4 first downs. Yeah, this one was a bloodbath. Number 3 will be the same as well, as I have the Oregon Ducks. It wasn't a pretty 60 minutes by them, but they took down Arizona by 22. Anthony Brown had 250 yards of total offense and 3 touchdowns. CJ Verdell was quiet on the night as he rushed for only 45 yards, as Travis Dye rushed for under 100. If you take the first and fourth quarters and combine them, Oregon outscored Arizona 34-7, but for some reason, they really struggled in between that period. The Ducks are still the team to beat in the Pac-12 though, and they're still a playoff contender. Number 4 is Iowa, who had a really close contest against Colorado State. The Hawkeyes were actually trailing as they entered the half, but they turned things around in the second half, outscoring the Rams 17-0. It wasn't pretty, but the Hawkeyes managed to pull it out. Their defense was great yet again, as they continue to look like the best defense in the Big Ten and one of the best defenses in the country. On the season, the Hawkeyes are allowing only 11 points a game. Next week is going to be a tough matchup as they go on the road to face an undefeated Maryland team. Number 5 is another Big Ten team, Penn State. They took care of business against Villanova, although they only won by 21 points. Sean Clifford threw for over 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, and he continues to have the best season of his career. The Nittany Lions couldn't get anything going on the ground as they rushed for only 80 yards on 34 carries. Penn State continues to impress as they now have won 8 straight games going back to last season. In 2 weeks, we'll have a game with Big Ten and playoff implications as Iowa hosts Penn State. Moving up to number 6 are the Arkansas Razorbacks. Who the hell would have thought this at the beginning of the season? Well, the Razorbacks are legit as they knocked off Texas A&M in convincing fashion. Arkansas led the entire game and held A&M to only 10 points. KJ Jefferson was great as he threw for over 200 yards with 2 touchdowns on only 7 completions, while also adding 50 yards on the ground. Arkansas held Texas A&M to under 300 yards for the game and forced them to go 4 for 14 on 3rd down. They had 9 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, and 8 quarterback hurries. The Razorbacks pick up one of the biggest wins of the college football season, as A&M was a legit playoff contender. What is Arkansas's reward for this huge win? Well, next week, they get to play at Georgia. They could focus on that game on Monday, but for now, we gotta give major props to what Sam Pittman has done with this team. Cincinnati comes in at number 7. They didn't play this weekend, but next week they have a huge game on their schedule as they travel to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. Speaking of Notre Dame, I have them coming in at number 8. I've been pretty low on them to begin this season, but what a statement game from them over Wisconsin. I get it, they scored 31 points in the 4th quarter, so the game looked more lopsided than it truly was. But Notre Dame still looked damn good. Jack Cohn was pretty bad as he left the game with an injury. Drew Pine stepped in and looked great as he completed 6 of 8 passes for under 100 yards. The defense suffocated the Badgers all game as they forced 5 turnovers, including 2 pick sixes to end the game. Next week is going to be a major test for Notre Dame though. As I mentioned, they'll be hosting Cincinnati. Number 9 goes to Oklahoma, who needed a game-winning field goal to beat West Virginia. Yet again, the Sooners just weren't that impressive. They were a 17-point favorite and struggled to put away the Mountaineers. Spencer Rattler was underwhelming again and even received boos and chants to be replaced by the home crowd. He threw a touchdown and had an interception. The Sooners did nothing on the ground as they averaged only 2 yards a carry. Something though I will give credit for the Sooners is their defense, as they held West Virginia to only 13 points, including only 6 points over the final 50 minutes. This makes 3 straight games where their defense has been impressive. How ironic it is that Oklahoma's defense is impressing us, but it's their offense that's letting us down. Ohio State comes in at number 10 as they defeated Akron by 52 points, and yet again, they also covered the spread. Kyle McCord looked great as he got the start while CJ Stroud sat out. McCord threw for 320 yards on only 13 completions. Travion Henderson and Master Teague each rushed for 2 touchdowns. Luckily for Ohio State, they actually have a pretty difficult schedule the rest of the way, so they still have a number of chances to get themselves back into the playoff discussion. Florida comes in at number 11 as they look good in their 24-point victory over Tennessee. Emory Jones continues to impress as he completed 21 to 27 passes for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also added 150 yards on the ground as well. I was pretty skeptical of Jones entering the season as I didn't think he'd be able to keep Florida around in the top 10, but so far through the first month, he's proved me wrong. Don't sleep on the Gators as a potential sleeper to win the SEC. Ole Miss comes in at number 12. They didn't play this weekend, and just like I mentioned earlier, they have a huge matchup next week against Alabama. Number 13 is where I have Texas A&M falling to. This was their first test against a good team, and look what happened. Zach Calzada was struggling all game, and so was the run game. I know that Isaiah Spiller had a 70-yard rushing touchdown, but if you were to take out that run, the team rushed for about 2 yards a carry the entire game. I know that anything can happen for A&M the rest of the season, but it really looks like the Aggies ended any playoff hopes with this loss. Number 14 is where I have Michigan coming in. I know people are hesitant with the Wolverines, but they're 4-0 and look like legit contenders in the Big Ten. They took care of business as they defeated a pretty good Rutgers team. The Wolverines led 20-3 at the half, but were held scoreless in the second half. It was a quiet game on the ground as Michigan entered as one of the best rushing teams in the country. Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins combined for only 110 yards and averaged only 3 yards a carry. Luckily for them though, they weren't necessarily needed as they were able to come out on top with the victory. Michigan has a pretty tough 2-game schedule coming up as they got to play on the road at Wisconsin and Nebraska. It's going to be interesting to see how they come out of those games, and I think we're going to have a better understanding of who exactly this Michigan team is after those 2 games. Number 15 goes to BYU as they picked up a pretty close win over South Florida, beating them by only 8 points. This game was highlighted by the Romneys. Baylor Romney got the start at quarterback as he threw for 300 yards with 3 touchdowns. Gunnar Romney caught 5 passes for over 100 yards with a score. The Cougars jumped out to a 21-0 lead with 4 minutes left in the first quarter, and it looked like it was going to be a 50-point victory, but the Bulls just kept inching their way back. It wasn't a pretty win for BYU, but they're now 4-0 on the season and have won 15 of their last 16 games. Number 16 are the Michigan State Spartans, who won a thrilling game in overtime against Nebraska. I don't care what the record says, but this Nebraska team is pretty good, so it was a great win for Michigan State. They're another surprise team in the Big Ten, as I had 0 expectations for them entering the season. They're now undefeated and have a chance to make some noise in the Big Ten. Something crazy about this game was the fact that the Spartans were actually outgained by 200 yards and had the ball for 15 fewer minutes. Still, a win is a win, and the Spartans have some really good ones this season. Coming up next at number 17 is Coastal Carolina, who beat UMass by 50. Grayson McCall threw for 150 yards with 2 touchdowns on only 10 completions, while the rushing attack had over 300 yards on the ground. Yet again, the Chanticleers took care of business, something they'll continue to do on a week-to-week basis. Cracking the top 25 is Baylor, who comes in at number 18. They're another surprise team as they're now 4-0 on the season after their win against Iowa State. The Bears had 3 easy wins to begin the season, so we were unsure as to how legit they truly were. But they showed they're the real deal in the Big 12, beating a really good Iowa State team. After falling behind 7-0 in the game, the Bears took the lead in the second quarter and led the rest of the way. Iowa State was a team that I thought had a chance of potentially being a playoff sleeper, but Baylor ruined any hopes of that. Number 19 is where we have NC State. They shocked the college football world with their win over Clemson in double overtime. A lot of people coming into the game thought the Wolfpack could potentially pull off this upset, and they did. Devin Leary was excellent as he threw for 250 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, all of which seemed to be insanely clutch. The Wolfpack's defense was even more impressive as they held Clemson to only 10 first downs for the entire game. The Tigers had the ball for only 18 minutes and in total gained only 200 yards. Not only does Clemson look to be done in the playoff, but they might be done in the ACC as well. NC State has a massive head-to-head win over them, and there's a chance the Wolfpack can now end up in the ACC title game. Coming in at number 20 is SMU, who is a team I had on upset watch this weekend against TCU. They took down an undefeated Horned Frogs team by 8 on the road and are now 4-0 on the season. The Mustangs continue to show that they have one of the best offenses in all of college football, largely due to Tanner Mordecai. The Oklahoma transfer threw for 250 yards with 4 passing touchdowns, while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Tanner Mordecai has 20 passing touchdowns. The Mustangs won't be making a playoff push in 2021, but with how good their offense is, we could easily see them making a New Year's 6 bowl game. UCLA bounced back after last week's loss to Fresno State, as I have them at number 21. They defeated Stanford on the road by 11 points. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was huge for the Bruins yet again, as he had 4 total touchdowns. He threw for over 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns, while adding 2 on the ground. It's the second straight week in which he provided most of the offense for the Bruins. Zach Charbonnet had himself a game as well, as he rushed for over 200 yards with a rushing touchdown. I still think this is a really good Bruins team. If it wasn't for Jake Haener turning into Tom Brady on that final drive last week, the Bruins would be undefeated and likely a borderline top 10 team. I still think they're going to make some noise in the Pac-12 this season. We have Texas coming back into the top 25 at number 22. Maybe that loss they had to Arkansas wasn't so bad after all. Their offense went nuclear on Saturday as they scored 70 points against Texas Tech. Bijan Robinson had nearly 200 yards of total offense and a touchdown and couldn't be stopped by the Red Raiders defense. Casey Thompson threw 5 touchdown passes and rushed for a touchdown as well. Ever since the Longhorns made the quarterback switch, this offense has looked incredible. If we just erase that Arkansas game, the sample size from Texas has been impressive this season. Maryland comes in at number 23, and they're now 4-0 on the season. I feel like I've said this about a lot of Big Ten teams, but man, what a surprise start to the season for the Terps. They defeated Kent State by 21 points, and the offense looked unstoppable. Talia Tagovailoa continued his Heisman campaign as he threw for just under 400 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Once we get more deep into Big Ten play, it's going to be interesting to see how divisional races pan out in this conference. Clemson falls all the way to number 24, and they almost fell out of my top 25 entirely. As I mentioned earlier, their offense was completely non-existent against NC State. They couldn't get anything going all game, and it's just another example of what we've seen from them all season. In 3 of their 4 games, the offense has looked truly awful, and I think there should be a lot of concern surrounding this Tigers team. They have a very winnable schedule the rest of the way, so at least they have that going for them. But who saw Clemson being 2-2 after 4 weeks? And in our top 25 is where I have Oklahoma State. They're another surprise team in the Big 12 as they knocked off number 25 Kansas State to remain undefeated. They had 3 pretty close wins to begin the season, but this was their best all-around showcase against the Wildcats. Spencer Sanders threw for 350 yards with 2 touchdowns, while also adding a touchdown on the ground as well. Jaylen Warren rushed for 120 yards and has now rushed for 340 yards over his last 2 games. The Cowboys are another potential sleeper in the Big 12 who could potentially make some noise this season. Well, there is my top 25 after week 4 of the college football season. Drop a comment down below and let me know what your thoughts were on the rankings. Was there a team that I had ranked too high or too low, or a team that I didn't even have in the top 25 at all? Let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't done so yet, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to the channel. I'm posting college football videos all season long, so if you're a college football fan, then this is definitely the place for you. If there are any other college football videos you'd like to see the rest of the week, comment down below and that could be my next video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.